So very recently there was a time where the thought of quitting research actually came into my mind. Somebody who loves research, shares posts and advice about research, thought about quitting research. But I thought it'd be interesting to share the three reasons why those thoughts came into my mind, just to see if it relates to you, if it resonates with you, and why I want to work on fixing those things or troubleshooting those things to help me to continue to do research. So I'm not quitting. Don't worry, this channel will still continue. The Instagram page will still continue. For those of you who are following, here is the Instagram page. But I thought it'd be really interesting to share what those kind of thought processes were, what those reasons were, to see if it can benefit you in any way, shape, or form. So without further ado, let's go into number one of the reasons why I thought about quitting research. Now, just a quick FYI before I carry on. I don't want this to discourage anybody from doing research, but it is important to be authentic and be objective and share, unfortunately, the harsh realities of research, not just the glamorous things that you might see from certain scientists and researchers. We want to make sure that we're sharing the ups and the downs just so you can see the full picture. So, number one is what I like to call publication nightmare. And this is the notion of the over importance of how you are measured by how much research you publish. I actually saw a recent post on Instagram which I'll share here. I can't remember the exact name, but I'll put the handle here. And it was a very useful post regarding the notion of how, especially when you finish your PhD and you're trying to apply for postdocs, the number one thing everybody looks at is how much you published. And it is seen as a marker of how good you are as a researcher. Now, I could see this is completely flawed because there are so many other reasons apart from you that hinders your progress in actually getting papers published. And you might be a part of a big team and you have so many names on your papers, but doesn't mean you are a amazing researcher or might be qualified for a position. And conversely, you might be an incredible researcher, very experienced, have many techniques, lots of experience on supervising and coordinating research. But because of maybe hindrances within your university and your lab, your team, you might not be able to churn out as much publications as the next person. And then you are at a deficit because of that. And one thing I've really, personally for me, is found out I've done so much research, I've been a part of so many teams, been contributed to a lot in terms of thought process, hypothesis, method optimization, all of this from my PhD to now. But because I've had many papers published, especially first author, I'm not deemed as a senior researcher. I'm not deemed as somebody who's got a lot of experience. And that's something that really, hurts. It really affects me, really annoys me. And the further along I go, and I'm still trying to get these papers out, the more it frustrates me when you're applying for new postdocs, as I am right now, because I've now finished my Glenfield post, the one where I was working for University of Leicester. I've now finished that post, and now I'm going to be looking at new postdocs. I don't like that feeling that it's always measured upon how much you publish. And comment down below if you also relate to this, because it's something I really, really despise. I don't like it, but it's hard to go against it. Sometimes you have to play the game. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that in particular. But number two is this notion of a research rat race. Now it's linked to the whole notion of publication, but until you land a permanent lectureship where you then have the ability to coordinate your own research, you've got a permanent position, so you can rest assured on that, and you can give some teaching as well, and you kind of establish yourself. But once you get to that stage, it's great. But getting there is incredibly difficult, where I would be very... It's hard to say, but what I do want to share is sometimes it's not what you do, is who you know. I was skeptical to share it in this video, but I do think it's unfortunately too common to dismiss, where a lot of posts are given just based on who you know, not what you've done. And with this rat race of trying to find a postdoc to another postdoc to a fellowship, then to a senior fellowship perhaps, then you may land a lectureship. Some people land one straight after their PhD, some people don't. And there's constant competition to land 3-4 year postdocs, then get papers published, then advance yourself, then apply for grants, then get fellowships. It's a lot, it's a tall order, and I do think it's that we see the corporate rat race, and a lot of people leave to run their own businesses and stuff like that. But I do think there is a research rat race where many people are competing to find the next position for 3-4 years, to then get the next position, and then try, even though it's such a bottleneck, try to get into academia or industry, even though academia from the lectureship position of something permanent. And that's something I don't like. That is, there's nothing we can do. It is what it is. It's the way it is. But it's something that really deters me away, where you have to do so much to then get your foot in the door in terms of academia. For me personally, for those who are interested in academia, whereas somebody else in industry might be able to get in maybe slightly easier, but then they can work their way upwards. And there's something I personally don't enjoy thinking about in terms of my goal to get into academia and then work up the ranks. It's not something I'm particularly looking forward to. So I've become more of, let's say, 50-50 on the notion of going into academia as a result of this. I didn't get paid for my PhD. I've had so many different postdoc jobs. It does take its toll on you. So comment down below if you also think it's a research rat race for all of us who are in the research space. Now, lastly, one of the biggest, deterrents for me in terms of perhaps staying in research long term is this constant pursuit for funding. Now, let's say you get through that rat race, let's say you publish everything, and let's say you get into academia, especially at a research intensive university. It doesn't mean that you're plain sailing and then you can relax. There is so much you need to do in terms of constantly apply for funding to fund new students and postdocs, new research projects, to make sure that you're what people call relevant. Because if you don't gather funding, you are left by the wayside, and you end up perhaps just doing teaching because you don't have enough funding to continue your research. And it's a constant cycle. Many people have long-standing contracts with industries and sponsors, and that's great. But many people, nearly 2-3 years, have to find funding to sponsor a PhD student. Some people take it the easy route, where a lot of students internationally come to their university and they come with funding. And it's the easy way to get your research funded without you actually having to do much. But for the vast majority to stay relevant and to stay important in that niche, where you're going to conferences and people know who you are because you're one of the leading scientists or the leading researchers in that area, it means that you've got a consistent stream of funding, and that's not an easy thing to do. Doing that, then managing the team, then managing your own role as a academic or consultant in the space of academia, it's a lot of responsibilities that you're constantly looking behind your shoulder about who else is winning that funding, or when is the next grant bid, how can we actually put our grant in, and then there's the next one, then we get rejected, and then unfortunately you're not going to be able to find things like that. So it's not a plain sailing role once you establish yourself. That's not a nice thing either. So it's something to think about for me personally going forward, but I thought it would be interesting, especially for those of you who are finishing your PhD and you are deciding what to do next. I think these points are really important to maybe take under advisement, take heed in terms of contemplate on them, because they are genuinely things that won't go away. We still have to measure on publications. We still have to compete with other people to get into postdocs. We still have to apply for funding constantly, and there's things we have to maybe reconcile and say, okay, fine, that's something we have to do. So yeah, I hope those points are important to you. I hope the points make some relevance to you, especially even if you're starting your PhD. I do think these points are something to remember and contemplate on if you are in the research space. So guys, that's the end of today's video. I know it's a slightly down of a topic, slightly more doom and gloom, but I do think it's really important to share not just the advice and all the things about winning an award and sharing tips about that. I think this is also really important to remember and take an advisement, because you may not get told by somebody else, and then perhaps it's too late. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I do want to be the bearer of news that's important. So I hope you do think it's important. If you do like these type of videos, do consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, because it'd be really helpful for me and the channel. And if you want to see kind of shorter form contents and things I'm up to, Aamir.phd is my Instagram page, where a lot of content is centered on. And if you want to stay tuned on the newsletter, where I share more tips and advice and upcoming ideas and things that might be in the pipeline, some breaking news hopefully soon, the newsletter is in the video description down below. But in any case, I shall hopefully see you in the next video. Take care.